want to hear what you want to happen at the West Island, what you want to happen at the Live Nation grounds. We want to know your vision for this space as ours. So we did not get a community consultation. We deserve one, and so we're making sure that it happens today. Okay, so the first thing we're going to do is we'll hear a little brief background now. So we'll hear from Emmy first. We're going to do where we are. So where we came, about Ontario Place, where we are up to this point in time, and essentially how we got here. And then we're going to share what we know. So we're going to talk about the CSO, the sewage, and we'll talk about the parking garage, the exhibition place, and how this affects our other public lands, which are our exhibition place. We're going to talk about traffic. We're going to talk about the other partners that are helping the province, and we're going to get through this. We're going to talk about Diamond Schmidt. We're going to talk about the studio TLA, thank you. And we're going to talk about how they are working with the province and with the REIT to destroy our public land and what they did while we're working together. And we're going to talk about the business case. Where is this coming from? It's a big issue we're hearing today. Who's serving? What are they doing? How did they get this money? Does this even make sense for $2.2 billion taxpayer dollars? And then we're going to find out where we go next. So this is the part where we're going to split up. We're going to stations. So we're going to talk about the business case. We'll talk about traffic. We'll talk about the CSO. Everyone can walk around. We will get to know your neighbors. This is meant to be a collaborative, fun event where we get to share ideas and really inspire each other to move forward. So, without further ado, I'm going to hand it over to Emmy. We just have a very small PowerPoint. As you see, that that's okay. Please walk me through it, and we'll share all slides afterwards with all participants.
Thank you so much. I'm just going to come around here and show you this very tiny presentation. As you can tell, we're a bunch of activists. None of us are in IT, so this is the best that we can do on top of make a snack. Okay. So my name is Emmy. I've been in Ontario Place for a couple of years now, and I've been a proud member of our steering committee. And today I want to talk about the history of our wonderful movement. So in 2019, Doug Ford said that there is nothing worth saving at Ontario Place. Oh, I know. So many people disagree with that comment, to the point that this little group called Ontario Place for All was created, where we have over 40,000 supporters who have come together to fight our province. I'm so proud of us. Wow. We have some great navigators. We have Norman Pasquale, who was our co-chair until very recently. We have, of course, Elizabeth Sampson, the wonderful co-chair at the moment. And we have a boy Bruce, who's the other co-chair temporarily. There you are. There we go. Thank you guys. And we have some wonderful architects, heritage leaders. We have conservatarians, and we have myself. So there's that too. And we've been able to successfully defend Trillium Park, which I'm very proud of, the Sinister and the Ontario cause for destruction. We have sent letters of concern to every level of government. We've called on the Auditor General. We've called for legal interventions, I think twice. We have asked our supporters to come to so many events, including this one, but also appropriate night that we held, and this is where we're at. But before I get into further about what we're doing next, I want to talk about something that's very important to all of us, which is our core principles. We believe that Ontario Place needs to celebrate Ontario. That's the most important thing about it. 100%. We want it to be integrated with the revitalization of Exhibition Place, and we want it to be incorporated with the idea of Indigenous heritage as well. So these are our core principles. These are things that we really, really care about. And before I continue to talk about that, I want us to get to where we came from. So you can partly see this presentation. What I wanted to highlight here is there's a quote from the 1970s from our former progressive conservative Premier of Ontario, John Robarts. Okay, so he said that there was a need for a place where we could examine our history, look at our cultural and economic growth, and contemplate the challenges of the future. He wanted a vision of a waterfront that could reaffirm our identity as Ontarians and Canadians. And that's from the Conservative Party. The same party today that's trying to destroy Ontario Place, and we're not having it. We're not okay with it. I just want to ask folks in this room if they were there during the opening of Ontario Place in 1971. Was there anybody that was there? That's so wonderful. So good to see some faces. I just want to give a really quick question to you to ask. You can shout loudly. What was it like to be there in 1971 when they opened? Just very loudly if you can. There we go. It must have been electric. I wish I could have been there. But it was very much we're just gonna get rid of that picture because I can't see it on my side. Okay, so it was very much a beautiful vision of what Ontario Place was meant to be. And between the 1980s to 2010s, it was this wonderful amusement park that many of you may remember. And then in 1995, the Forum was destroyed and replaced with the Budweiser stage, and it split the island into two. And then in 2012, Ontario Place was closed, and by 2017, the children's park had to be opened, and it's been such a beautiful sight during that period. However, also during this period was the fact that many cultural heritage organizations started recognizing our waterfront as a place that's at risk of its heritage value, and so many groups came together to look at Ontario Place and question what's going on. Also, during this time, surprisingly, Ontario Place was well visited and well loved. So our Minister of Infrastructure, Kata Sharma, drove by Ontario Place and said to Ontarians that nobody visits Ontario Place. But in 2022, 2.9 million people visited Ontario Place. Okay? And people have visited the site in every single season, from winter to summer. And we just wanted to show and highlight the fact that the minister was wrong. Back to the timelines. So in 2019, the government ran a call for submissions, and during this period, there was no fairness monitor, there was no scoring, and the government extended their bid deadline, and Thursday submitted it at the end of the deadline. So that was a little fishy to all of us. It really felt like this procurement process was unfair. We started asking questions about whether or not the outcome was predetermined. And we wanted to know why the public wasn't consulted in this whole period. The following year in 2020, we had some leaked information that came out where a government internal document showed what looks like a thermal megathon, okay? 18 months before the wind bid was announced. And it also showed the Ontario Science Center relocation 3 years before that was made public. So that sounds pretty suspicious to me. The following year, the proposed plan Expo was awarded to Thurman. And you can't really see it here, but you already know it's this huge building that just takes over the entire West Island, and there's no public access for anybody over there. And what's so harmful about it is that we all know that the science that the Ontario Place was meant to be for the public. And so we now see this humongous mega spot that's 13 stories high. And it just gets rid of all of the views of our sphere of the pause. And the most crushing thing about this is that they want to get rid of the Ontario Place sign that's at the entrance to the Ontario Place and just slap firmly on top of it. It's not even a Canadian company, we're getting like a foreign company just slapped on the top of our waterfront. It's shameful. Also during this, we learned that the government exempted the remaining litigation from any environmental assessments. This is very technical speak for they just rushed the process so that nobody was the environmental harms that are going to take place. Environmental harms including the reshaping of natural habitats, the clear cutting, the lake filling, the fact that Liberty Village is now run over by coyotes. I don't know what that's about, but that definitely is about Ontario Place. So they just made sure that they could just rush this corrupt deal on, but in doing so, they also got rid of over 1,500 trees that were ready to cut last October in the middle of the day. Middle of the night. Which was obviously devastating for me. It really hurt just to know that my government doesn't care about our environment, and as a young person, I really do. So it just really showed that we have long leadership, basically. Another worrying factor about this whole process for us is the cost of it. Okay, so a couple of years ago, we had estimates of the parking lot and other upgraded work being at $850 million. And that's what we found out from a few journalists back then. So now, as of this past year, the Auditor General released information showing that the cost is now upwards of $2.2 billion. Okay, I don't know if we'll talk further about this, but just the cost of our public money is so alarming. The cost of it is $400 per household that's going into this law, and I just think that it's such a bad deal. Another factor about this, so many factors that's terrible about this whole project, is that we found out a few years ago that Fairview was handed a 95-year lease. Okay, so typically governments hand leases to other branches of government, like for a hospital or something, for like 95 years. But it's so unprecedented for a government to be giving a 95-year lease to a foreign company, and then two, to a company that's existed less than 10 years. And then three, today, the New York Times article, we found out that a company that they don't know anything about. So that is also an alarming fact. And finally, we also learned that the Science Center was set to be demolished, and that a diminished version of it was set to be put into our waterfront at a cost of approximately $400 million. And throughout this entire process, as you know, there's not been any consultations before 2019, between the years of 2019 to 2021, and then after the decision of the next law was made, over 10,000 consultations happened where we all came out of the city and said no to it. And yet, despite that, the government still went ahead. We also, thankfully, on a more positive note, have been able to get a lot of opposition towards this, not just from many engaged students like yourself, but from all levels of opposition government, as well as different publications, including the Toronto Star editorial board, different architectural groups, environmental groups, and even partners that used to be aligned with Firm have now dropped out to the extent. And so we've really kept building this momentum, and we're really excited about that. And then finally, we received a bit of support from the business community. We commissioned a report from this consulting firm, which showed that our idea of having a public waterfront is less risky, it will cost less, and it will have up to a 100-year investment lifespan. Okay? But if there's a private company that's running the service, which is the case, it's going to be more expensive. We'll have only a 20-year investment lifespan, and we run that as a consistent risk of decline. So we just know it's a bad deal, the New York Times just released it's a bad deal, everybody in this room agrees, so I just want us to keep the momentum going, and I want us to keep fighting against this lease, and I know we can get it done, so thank you so much for being here, and appreciate it. Thank you.
About what we know. I'm not even going to try to show you the presentation. But I'm going to use it to remind myself about things today. Peaceful. How's that? Okay, great. Thank you so much for being here tonight and for tolerating our very grassroots setup, as I pointed out. We're doing our best. My name is Anna Elizabeth Sampson, and I've been the co-chair along with Norm for a couple of years now. I'm very excited to, the goal of our meeting today is to try to get a handle on this big, kind of complex mess. And so Emmy's done a great job of kind of telling the history of how we got here. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to talk about some of the major issues that we see. I'm going to just touch on them, and then hopefully when we go into some work, we can find opportunities to talk more about them. Because if we try to give you all the details of everything that we're trying to track, we would be here all night, and it would be very, very boring and frustrating. So the first thing I want to lay out is kind of the players, right? So the Ontario History Development is a project of the Government of Ontario, who obviously built the island and opened the attraction in the 70s. The Government of Ontario includes the Ministry of Infrastructure and Infrastructure Ontario, the Artisan Development Organization. They're going to delve into the procurement and the bidding process and sign a contract with them, and is doing work now on the land. They've also been shepherding through the application. Originally, they were coming to the city with a development application. So by and large, it's Infrastructure Ontario and Government of Ontario. And we know also that Premier Ford is very interested in this file in his office. Also, we have the companies that are contracted with the Government of Ontario. We have Therma. It is Therma Canada, but as far as we can tell, there are very few employees here in Canada. They have subcontracted with a number of other companies. Diamond Schmidt, Urban Strategies, Elliston Strategy Corp, Studio CLA, BDP, Quadrant, or Icon. Those are all doing some of the work, and also some of those are contracted by the Government of Ontario. We also have Live Nation, which you probably all know as a massive monopoly on concerts, which we haven't even dealt with yet. They're coming down the road. They have the contract, they run the Rider Stage, which is, the plan is apparently to build that into a bigger 12-month year-round facility. But we haven't seen the proposal, we don't know much about it, and we also don't know if we will see it next to the Building Ontario Act. I'll talk a little bit about. So we have the private companies, the Government of Ontario, and then we have some other people, or groups. We have the City of Toronto. The City of Toronto made an agreement with the province to cooperate on this project, or to maybe not cooperate is the right word, maybe just not get in the way. The province has the right to expropriate land to kind of do what they want, to overrule the City of Toronto. And so, as a result, for example, we got a lot of information about the buildings themselves from the city consultation process, but now we're going to the city consultation process because the province is taking it over. So the city will be doing certain things. For example, the city is related to Exhibition Place. And the city will be negotiating with the province and Exhibition Place on the location of the parking which is determined for the pay bill, which is part of the lease that they'll have to provide. So there are a number of pieces that we're following. We also know that city staff have to deal with other things like sewage and water and roads and other things like that. So I'm trying to map out for you kind of the complexity of the situation and where decisions are made, which is not always entirely. Okay, so we talked about the government. So I have a slide here of what we know about the Thurman Group. And of course, with today's revelations in the New York Times, we have even more information, and quite frankly, we got confirmed things that we suspected, maybe not exactly as we suspected them, but it's always seemed to be a bit hazy. Therma is an Austrian-based U.S. headquartered private company. They're building attractions, which are spas, water parks. The financial statements are not publicly available. The Auditor General raised concerns about them, and the New York Times investigation said they have not secured financing for the Toronto project, even though they have secured it for others. So that's fairly relevant since we cut down our trees. Our government is holding up their end of the bargain, and we don't know much about this other company. We can talk about the plan. It's an untested model in North America. There's very little infrastructure here, staffing for us to even know what to engage with. And the financial feasibility, their plan in order to make this thing work requires thousands of people per day. Well more than any other attraction in the city. So that's something also to I do want to bring up a guest. Where's David? David Gray Donald is an amazing reporter with the Grind. Am I correct? Can you share a little bit about what we know about the lease and the organization of the
Thanks so much for the invite. So I have an article. Is it close enough? Am I good for sound? So I published an article in the most recent edition of The Grind, and this copy is in the back when I'm leaving. And I just want to touch on a couple of the points from what I found. And this was prompted by Strategy Corp getting in touch and asking for a correction to an article, and they didn't get the correction. We looked into it further, and what we found was that buried in the lease, there's a couple of things that are relevant. One is that it keeps saying there's a public park. And the park is going to be controlled by Therma for 90 years, and they get to control everything that goes on in it. It's supposed to be accessible to the public in general. However, at any time, up to 30% of the land can be used for commercial activities. I asked them if that means private events, private weddings, ticketed events, concerts, that kind of thing. And 1 second. The spokesperson said, I don't know the answer to that question. These are speculative, what if in the future. They don't know. They won't say. The other relevant thing I'll just add is that the designs have to be agreed between Therma and the Ontario government. The drawings basically have to be agreed at 30% complete, the 60%, the 90%, 100% complete. The design, so not the construction. So I asked what stage are the designs at? They didn't answer, they didn't know. But what you might remember is at a certain point, I think about in the fall, they changed the design of the spa facility itself, and they said the park is going to get bigger and the spa is going to get smaller. So what you can take from that is that the designs are not at 100% yet. So it's still available to change. That's the other thing I'll add. And I'll just finish by saying, this is a bit technical, but in the commercial spaces that I was saying about the outdoor space, the revenue that they generate from that does not have to go into what's called their performance rent. So they're just gonna pocket the money from these commercial activities outdoors. That's not gonna go back to taxpayers. And I have one final thing, I guess just to say that if you ever see FEMA in the media in Canada, or putting out statements, it's almost always strategy work that you're dealing with. So keep that in mind. Some of the strategy corps' main clients are conservation agencies. I believe it's the Nature Conservancy of Canada is one of their main clients. And you can see their client list fairly easily. It's kind of shocking that the right hand does this and the left hand does that. So I'll leave it there, and there's copies of the magazine in the back, and you can find us online as well.
Dave's reporting is excellent, and one of the reasons maybe the New York Times is so surprising today. So we know what we've learned is that, the government says we're going to have a park. What it means is we're going to have some pathways around a very large building, and on top of the building, the last design was shared with the public. But I will note that because of what ended up happening, none of these designs have to be, tested with the public anymore. So we were in a public consultation process next to the city's work, and that was all cut off. So the big unknown for us is the handoff timing. So this is relevant because the lease requires them to start building by spring of 2026, and once they hand off the land to the company, the cost of us getting out of this deal is exorbitant. It's crazy. I mean, we have to give them 10 years notice and build them new spots on the people of Ontario. But until they hand that land off, it's $30 million kill fee for the contract. So $30 million compared to $2.3 billion is really quite. But this is one thing we don't know. So there are a lot of things we don't know about South Street. I talked a bit about the city. The city's done a few other things. They did a traffic study, which showed that the spot project will increase traffic on Lake Shore, which I know anyone who drives. That's it. And they've also done, they've had to be engaged with the sewers, the water, and stuff like that. They are also part of the negotiations for the parking lot. Okay, I forgot to mention a very important player in our map, because I didn't use the slide, which is us, the community. We have our activism, we've been bringing this issue to the public. We have had a few small wins occasionally, and we take them our way behind. But as Julia said, one of the main issues we have is getting this message outside of our small geographic area. Okay, we've talked about the costs. Okay, so there's some big issues coming up, and this is kind of, we wanted to talk through a few of them, and then we can go over to somebody else. We have community knock-on effects, right? We have traffic, congestion, we have coyotes, which, yes, something we weren't quite sure about. We have other issues related to water. So, what happened over the holidays is the province, the province submitted an application to the city to make some changes to what's called the CSO, which is a combined sewer outflow. Now, we have overflow sewer pipes in our city that dump into the lake. And there's one that goes under the Western Channel, through the Greatwater, out into the open lake. And in order to do the construction on the island, the province proposed they cut it off and dump it into the Western Channel. So if you use the Western Channel, I personally am a rower, we're talking about in that, really overflowing days, we would have possible sewage in the water.
The province kind of dropped that on the city right around the holidays. And they also put it up on their website for public comment. Thanks to all of you and many others, they got 2,250 comments. They posted, the applicant has withdrawn their application. No approval was issued. Now, that feels like a win. But we don't know what's next. Like, are they just going to do it? That one is really complicated. Are they going to do the big long-term fix, which is actually building a pipe way out into the lake? But this all comes at extreme cost to the taxpayer. I wanted to update you as well. So there's also been an ongoing legal fight that we've been part of. I'm not going to spend too much time on it because sadly it's really not a direct. Ontario Place for All brought legal action against the government for failing to conduct an environmental assessment on the west side of the project. And instead of responding to us in court, they passed a law called the Rebuilding Ontario Place Act, ROPA, which allows them to do whatever they want down there. So that's a bit crazy. And the group of our allies, Ontario Place Protectors, challenged that law and its constitutionality, and we lost. So this is what I learned about environmental law in Ontario. It was really not very hard. And then they made an appeal, and Ontario Place for All, along with some other coalition partners, we all intervened in the case, and we lost again. So, unfortunately, legal avenues are really not going to get us where we need to go. We need to be thinking about legal strategies. Big issue coming up is the parking garage. You've heard me mention it. In the new deal for Toronto, the city of Toronto agreed to work with the province to find an alternate site for parking so that it wouldn't be on the lake, right on the edge of the lake. They were exploring options with the X. So according to the lease, the province must provide an additional 1,800 parking spaces and 4 penalties. And Premier Ford said he wants above ground parking because it's cheaper. And the city, mostly Councillor Osborne, who's the chair of the board, is pushing for underground parking as it's better for the community. However, we don't know where these talks are. They've mostly been in secret. We are not familiar. We've heard rumors that there might be some, different sites of the exhibition where we might end up seeing a big parking garage. And we have Rick Amos, a community member, here tonight, who will lead one of our little groups on the parking because he's involved with the X and he knows the site really well. And lastly, I just want to talk about the tariffs and the focus on Canadian innovation. And I'm actually going to let Chris Glover come up. Are you ready? To talk to us about
Wow. Okay. Before I get into my remarks, I just want to say thank you. Because this has been a 6-year-long fight. And the reason that we've been able to expose just what a corrupt and bad deal this is because of all of the work of everybody in this room, of Ontario Place for All, of the Architectural Conservancy, of so many other individuals and organizations. So let's give yourselves and them a huge, huge round of applause for all of them. We are continuing to fight to stay Ontario Place for Ontarians and not turn it into an Austrian megastar. We are going to continue that fight and we will win this fight. And today, the New York Times article, the government of Florida conservatives look like fools. Okay, they look like absolute fools. Scam artists came to them and said, oh, we're operating 4 spas in Europe. Okay, but they were only operating 1 spa in Budapest, outside of Budapest. The ones in Germany, they stole the name server on it, they use the icon, the graphic from it. And, but they had no, according to the New York Times, they had no actual business connection with the first boss in Germany. And this government made a deal with them to give them $2.2 billion of our tax dollars and a 95-year lease on a public park rent, but that's not where it ends. They actually created a special process. What they used to go through a procurement process with all kinds of checks and balances. They waived the checks and balances. They said, no, we're going to do this as a real estate transaction. The auditor general said, well, they even broke the rules of real estate transaction. You know, Ford said that he's going to get to the bottom of it. Well, the auditor general said that the premier's office was communicating with applicants against the rules while the applicants were being considered. Okay, and so was the Ministry of Infrastructure. So the Ministry of Infrastructure and the Premier's office were directly involved in this horrific deal. It's absolutely shocking how bad this deal is, and Emmy and Elizabeth have gone through some of it. But I think now this gives us some hope, because how can you possibly, they fell for a ruse by a scam artist. And they've made this huge commitment. They've cut down 1,500 trees for them. They've, destroyed, they passed legislation, Bill 154, the Roadmap Act, that exempted this project from all municipal and provincial laws, and then also exonerated their ministers and government agents from any acts that they may have committed in this project that would count as misuse, which means misuse of government power, breach of contract, breach of trust. So they actually went all this way for a company that was apparently lying to them. So they've got to stop this project. And this is an opportunity, because right now, actually, let me go back. The original vision, and Emmy talked about this, the original vision for Ontario Place was to showcase Ontario, because no one describes themselves as an Ontarian. We all describe ourselves as Canadians. And so John Robarts wanted to do something to celebrate Ontario. And the original vision was on the IMAX Theatre to showcase Ontario innovation. The IMAX Theatre, world's first IMAX Theatre. IMAX is an Ontario innovation. They also had, it launched the international careers of the architect, Ed Simon, the landscape architect, Michael Huff, thank you. Okay. And the designer of the Children's Village, Eric McMillan. And Eric McMillan, Ontario Place was the world's first ball pit, and that was designed by Eric McMillan. And these Ontario innovators went on to global careers where they were designing landscapes and buildings and children's places all around the world. So when you think about this moment in history right now, when we are under threat, tariff and sovereignty threats from the United States, and we're breaking, bonds with our what used to be our good neighbors to the south, and we're looking at, we've got to, look for new trade partners. We've got to be able to showcase and develop our innovations. This is the opportunity that Ontario Place presents for this generation, for another generation of architects and landscape architects and children's villages and technology. So we have to use Ontario Place now and seize this opportunity to really showcase what Ontarians can do and then sell that out to the world. There's an opportunity. So that is the opportunity, and that's what we're going to be exploring as we go into these groups and talk about, how do we do this? How do we get to this? How do we live and put the pressure on to make sure that this terrible, foolish deal gets canceled, and that a new opportunity comes out of it, which is an opportunity for Ontario to showcase Ontario innovators and businesses.
Thank you, Chris. So that brings us to the end of our talking at you phase. And I'm going to hand over to Julia. I just want to thank you all again for being here, because even when we're in a hard fight, us doing it together makes it feel a lot better.
So what we're going to do now is we're going to let you roam, walk about, meet each other. We have various stations set up. We're going to talk about sewage, we're going to talk about what's happening at the X. We're going to talk about our vision for what we want in Ontario Place. And there's a couple things, as I mentioned, we want to hear from you. We want your ideas, we want your thoughts, and we also want your actions. So up here, when you're talking about the vision, there's a pledge form. And the pledge form asks you to take 3 actions for Ontario Place. You can choose what they are. It can be, it's a long weekend this weekend, you may be visiting family from out of town. Talk to them. Are they from other areas of Ontario? Do they know what's happening in Toronto? They probably don't care. Make them care. So get them to chat about what's happening, their tax dollars, what's happening to their public land that belongs to Ontarians. Talk about it. Get them to write their local MP or their newspaper, write a letter to the editor. We have samples and things that you can draw from our website, put there for you on the pledge form. Take it, write your own, it would be wonderful. Talk to your city councilor. Tell the city of Toronto we want action on this. Get them to consider this new deal that's been had and all the new information we now have after that deal's been signed. We know more about the traffic, we know more about sewage, we know more about what's happening at the X and how it's going to impact us. So let's talk about that, write your city officials. Talk about the economy, the $2.2 billion that's going to be spent. Talk about the tariffs. Thank you so much, Chris. So please, we're going to have these please pledge forms at the end. Sign them, commit to it. Let's all work together. But for now, just enjoy yourselves. We're gonna walk around. We're post-it notes at each station. So please take them, post your ideas, write them. There'll be facilitators at each station to share information.
There are petitions going around, please sign them, I will read them in the legislature tomorrow. Thank you.
And the other thing is the live stream. Thank you so much for those joining us on the live stream. We'll end it now. But what we are going to do is we're going to take all of your ideas at the end. We'll put them together and we're going to make sure that we share them and that we should just circulate them. So trust me, your ideas are going to be here. So thank you for those joining us on the live stream. So Greg, wonderful commentarian, breaking this, is going to be